brute, but there are more than 70 riders getting up there to the base of that climb last year, and that could be the reason why the organisers have made the route this year one of the hardest in recent times. The finish at Arns itself is up a hill as we now look down on the riders. As I say, about 100 kilometres to go. We're waiting for final confirmation on that. I'll quickly give you the names. The breakaway started at 30 kilometres today. Stefan Wessermann of Germany getting clear, and the Discovery Channel team rider from Spain, Benjamin Noval. They were quickly joined by Koen de Kurt of the Liberty team, Johan Verstrepen of Lambau Credit, Walter Benito of the Boyga team from France. Maximum lead of 8 minutes 20. Last check we got, it was down to 5 minutes 10. Bob.
5 minutes 10 seconds lead. Benjamin Noval having a good day for the Discovery Channel team. We saw him do a fantastic Tour de France last summer in support of Lance Armstrong's 6th win and record-breaking win in the Tour de France. Benjamin Noval, a very strong bike racer. Been rather quiet so far this spring, but it's great to see him out on a breakaway with none other than Stefan Wessermann of the T-Mobile squad. Both Discovery and T-Mobile looking for some serious results in this year's edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Very tough bike race, lots of hills, the oldest classic, and an absolutely gorgeous race. And so far we've had great conditions.
These are the 5 leaders, and they're now just starting the early slopes here of the Côte d'Ouane. And I think they'll begin to realise that behind the main field will start to whip up the pacemaking. They had a maximum advantage of 8 minutes and 20 seconds, but very shortly that's going to start to tumble, because again, this is what we call the early morning breakaway. They've been at the front of the race now for around about close on 200 kilometres.
The time here in France now is just 10 minutes after 3 in the afternoon. They've been out since mid-morning. Big send-off in Liège for the 91st time. 195 riders rolling out, in fact. A big peloton. And really, none of these riders, with the exception of Stefan Wessermann, we would put in the category, because they have had good results, but not of the quality of Stefan, former winner of one-day classic races. And looking pretty strong right now, and that's why we feel he has a plan, or at least his team has got a big plan today.
This is the Côte d'Ouane. The roads are getting slightly smaller now on the way back from Bastogne, which is always regarded as the turning point of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. They come along some pretty large main roads, but once they get into the strategic points with these climbs of the Côte d'Ouane, the Côte de Stocker, the roads are a lot smaller, and in fact the descents off these little climbs here are rather precarious.
Finney once had a very serious crash in this race. Thankfully he recovered to go on to win stages of the Tour de France, but it was a very ugly crash at the time. It's a pretty routine, one attack, 5 riders coming together at around about 673 kilometres. It's come down now. We've had no check since that 4 minutes 55, about 10 minutes ago, but I'd be very surprised it didn't continue to now collapse.
I think it will start to tumble very rapidly. Stefan Wessermann out on a suicide mission, really. The man on the front there is Verstrepen from the Landbau Credit team. They will very shortly see the time gap starting to come down, because with this repetitive nature of these very narrow roads, I think the main field, Bob, would really have to go fairly fast, because the big names would want to stay at the front end of the race. 13% is the steepest part of this climb, with an average gradient of 7.7, and it's just over 2 kilometres in length. There is a big strong man, Stefan Wessermann, a winner in the past of a race called the Peace Race, probably one of the top amateur races in the world in its time in the former Eastern Bloc countries, and this year for the first time since the war not actually happening.
Also a winner of the Tour of Flanders last year. Tried to duplicate that success earlier in the spring. He was unable to do that. He missed out on the big breakaway in Paris-Roubaix. That's his favorite race of the year. Stefan Wessermann sitting there a little bit too far back in the field, and that's what drives the peloton in the finale of these bike races. Everybody's so desperate to get to the front that the pace in the group, it just goes up and up and up with each little difficulty out on the race course. Wessermann missing out on the break that was led by the Fassa Bortolo riders, Juan Antonio Flecha, as well as George Hincapie, of course, of the Discovery team, and of course Tom Boonen. Tom Boonen's teammate Pipo Pozzato putting the hammer down, caught Wessermann unawares a little bit too far down the group, and he never made it back to the front, even though he chased for the final 50 kilometers of the bike race. He was very strong there, but he didn't quite make it. And there's the peloton, and look right in the middle there is Alexander Vinokourov, one of the other stars in the T-Mobile squad that they're hoping can do something today. Just behind him, Oscar Freire, who had a very good Flèche Wallonne.
It may be the presence of Vinokourov here because He was my guest to really give it a good go today. If he gets half a chance, he is the best ever finisher from his nation in Kazakhstan in this event. He finished third in it last year, so he knows what's in front of him, and that might be the reason why Westerman is doing the work up front just now.
Arrière du peloton, the back end of the main field, and looks like somebody's got a problem over to the right-hand side there.
I think, in fact, it was Petito there standing on the roadside, Roberto Petito. Not a good place to puncture. Why wait till the hill? He should have flatted on the bottom, shouldn't he?
A bit of bad luck there. You can see the leading group of 5 starting to split. This young man here from Liberty Seguros, he's going out of the back. It also seems as if De Kort is also having a bit of a... This is De Kort. It also seems as if Verstappen is having a bit of a problem too.
Young professionals are now finding the pressure just a little bit too much under the impetus perhaps of Walter Benetton. No, on the contrary, he's also going out of the back. Well, so far on the climbs, we haven't had many, but every time over the top has been Westerman building points in the competition over the little climbs. Remember, there's 12 of them during the day. And now it looks as though that they've gone back to the original 2 men that started the move here at 30 kilometres. Benjamin Novell and Westerman.
Not surprising to see Novell, the strongest rider here. He's a tough man. We've seen him work very hard for Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France last year. Now today giving himself a certain amount of freedom, because Discovery Channel, Bob, I think having a very difficult time fielding on 2 fronts at the moment. They've got a team in the United States riding the Dodge Tour of Georgia, and here really when you look down through the list of riders who are participating for Discovery Channel, it's difficult to find a leader. Stein de Volder has been tipped as the leader for the team, but for me he's basically a rider better suited to the flatter Flemish races.
Well, that's a very good point you bring up, is the Pro Tour has stretched all of these teams to the limit. We'll have to see what effect that has later on in the year, but the managers having to shepherd their troops all over the world nowadays in a number of different races. Sometimes the teams racing 3 different races simultaneously, so a lot of changes coming down in international cycling, mostly brought on because of the Pro Tour. Here we see Johan Verstappen being dropped by the leading 2 riders, Novell and Westerman, and a little bit further down you see De Kort, and then further down the road is Benetton. So Benetton, the first to be dropped, looked to be the weakest the last climb, and now he's probably gone for good from the front group, and it's been a very tough stage race so far today, and Benjamin Novell looking very good at the front with Stefan Westerman.
Westerman just doing enough here, the greater experience of the 2. Not overdoing it. He knows there's an awful long way to race, nearly 90 kilometres, 57 miles still to ride. He's not going to push it too hard, and if Novell wants to push it hard, he'll follow him when he has to. But this is the way it was at the start after 30 kilometres now. The 2 strong men had 3 visitors for an hour or 2, and they've sent them all back towards the peloton. The hills in this area are very, very steep, and they hurt. They're not that long, but as you can see, the damage they've just done. Now, this is interesting because Rabobank have put all of their men up near the front for Bogart, I suspect, as they now keep an eye on the action. It's not going to be long now, Paul, before we see 1 or 2 people start to split away here. That's Decker on the left of our picture as well.
Yeah, Eric Decker also in pretty good form. That's Michael Bogard in the middle. I would think Michael Bogard thinking about a bit of revenge. He was second in the Amstel Gold Race. He's been in the top 3 of the Amstel Gold Race basically since 1999, and you can see the time gap there, and it's obviously because we're coming the hills. It's 2 minutes and 42 seconds, so it really has plummeted. Oscar Freire stuck in the middle, I would think would have to be used as a wild card, having been beaten in Amstel Gold Race, Bob, and not too far away in Flèche Wallonne, which is not his kind of a finish. But I would think today, having not come up with the goods in the Amstel Gold Race, they'll have to give the chance to Michael Bogart.
Michael Bogart was second in this race last year, just barely losing out to incredibly on-form David Rebellin. So Bogart looking for a big win. He's won Amstel in the past and always been close. This year was no exception. He was right up there at the finish, but just not quite able to get the win. Danilo De Luca won Amstel, then Flèche, and here we see an attack by the CSC team. See Paolo Bettini also not too far away from the front. He's had a very quiet spring himself, and I'm surprised to see that Bettini hasn't done quite a bit better. The gap has come down precipitously for our 2 leaders to 2 minutes and 43 seconds just in the very, very recent part of this race. Quick Step bridging across to the CSC rider, and now you can see T-Mobile rider. It looks like it might be That's an interesting place to attack from the side of the road. If you got to do it, though, and you're ready, you might as well give it a try. Vinokurov, I think, is coming across to the front group now.
I think it's the Russian rider Gusev who's made the move here, but they're quickly bridging the gap. The strongmen making a move. The Côte de One has hurt a lot of riders here. Now, Westerman went first over the top again, so he's building a points competition lead in the Little King of the Hills competition, but 5 men trying to get themselves together now. You get some idea of the steepness of the Côte de One just there off that bottom bend, but look how quickly this group has opened the gap. It was all done by the Team CSC man, who chose to do a little bit of cyclocross. The gap suddenly from 5:10 has plummeted to 2:42, so they know they've got the leaders under control. They're just trying now to shuffle up the pack and see which ones can get away here. But as we say, Bob, the elastic is stretching.
Well, Benjamin Noval is, I suppose you would say, the least experienced of the 2 riders in the front. He's never actually won a professional race in his career. He turned professional back in 2001 and rode for the small Spanish team Relax Fuenlabrada for 3 seasons until he was brought on board to Team US Postal Service last year, where he was really an unbelievable found, because he's a man that we hadn't talked very much about. And then the next minute he's at the front doing big turns for Lance in races like the Tour de France.
Another Brunel discovery, the director of the, as it was, US Postal, now Team Discovery, a very shrewd operator. Speaks fluent Spanish, used to race on the Spanish team himself, so he keeps a close eye on the Spanish cycling scene. And this was his latest discovery. Excuse the pun.
Very good pun. But in fact, the other discovery was the Japanese rider who he had in the early part of the season in the Tour de Langkawi. They've tried to internationalize their squad this year, and of course it's a very big squad with almost 30 members, and the reason for that is because I think Discovery Channel's ideology is to try and get as much publicity around the world as possible for their channel, which is why they're very much emulating what Motorola did in the 1990s, putting together a team with a whole mix of international characters. Westerman put a lot of effort into this, just having a look down there to see if there's a problem with that back tire. I don't think there was. It seems to get exaggerated by the fact that we're in a very rough part of the Ardennes here. These roads are narrow, very bumpy, hardly used at all during the winter months when they can be very often covered with snow. And as they drop away from the summit of the Côte de One, once they come down into the small town of Stocker at the bottom, the town is Stavelot. That's an indication of the start of the Côte de Stocker, and no respite at all, because they drop back down into Stavelot and then immediately start the climb of the Haute Levée, which I don't think they've done for a couple of years.
That's true. It's been reintroduced this year, and it is a nasty climb. But the roads around here now are beautiful. But as you can see, we haven't got quite the crowds of Paris-Roubaix or even the Amstel Gold Race, because this is a very lightly populated area of Belgium. Here's Jens Voigt, who had a wonderful time out in the Flèche Wallonne a few days ago, and it looks as though he's come up to this group, and that'll give a little bit of help to the other rider, who I think was in fact Peter Lutenberger, who got up and started the move. On motorbike here, rather anxious to get out of the way, but this is the group that's come together. 84 kilometres to go. Voigt he just loves racing, and he hates it when the pace isn't full on. Look at him waving his arms, keeping the action going. He's an incredible rider.
He's a strong boy. I tell you what, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Jens Voigt when you get into a breakaway situation like this. That is Gusev, who's up there as well, a rider who in the early part of the season was a long-time leader of the prologue of Paris-Nice, a name that I hadn't heard of until the start of this year. Jens Voigt, what a remarkable recovery, Bob, because he was the man who was caught with around about 5 kilometres to go towards the end of the Flèche Wallonne, and here he is again doing battle on the roads of Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Incredible to see Jens Voigt out on the attack, driving the pace there. Paolo Bettini, it seemed like, even having a hard time coming through. Paolo Bettini in the gold helmet from the Quick-Step team has gone back through the line of racers. A couple of Rabobank riders, Fassa Bortolo, but it's CSC driving the tempo right now. That could be Mirko Celestino of the Domini Vacanze team coming to the front. So this could be a very serious breakaway with Bettini, Voigt, Celestino, and if that's David Rebellin from the Gerolsteiner squad, that would be something serious indeed. So now the race is flat out, and the peloton scrabbling behind to get back on terms with the second group out on the road.
Well, you just saw a quick glimpse there. The riders come down from the right-hand side there into the outskirts of Stavelot, take a sharp right-hand turn up the slopes of the Stocker climb, and then drop back down into the other side of town. Very complicated if you're an organizer trying to get them in and out of this very small town. There's the race leaders' car going round the corner there. That's the corner, the right-hand corner for Stocker, and those people there have got a very good chance, because not only do they see the race going up Stocker, they get a chance there to see them coming down on the other side of the road.
Very sharp turn. Thankfully it's not too wet. Well, it's not wet at all today, which is a big relief. So here's a little chance to see the crowd now. This is where they've been waiting in this lovely town. First onto the climb, the Côte de Stocker, is Vesseman and Benjamin Noval, as they now will dig deep here, because I would think already the riders they have left can only be about 45 seconds in front of that group being led by Jens Voigt. And they're looking rather serious now. The race is all of a sudden very much on now, having had our little preamble down to Bastogne and turned around the American tank, which still stands in the square down in Bostania, remnants of the World Wars, of course, when America came here and repatriated the Belgians.
Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah. There's a bulge coming down here now. It's very narrow, this road, as they go around these left hands. You've got to be careful. This will be Walter Benetto. He's still out on his own between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, I think.
You get a chance to see how difficult these roads are, and it really is bouncing around quite a bit. These roads very much damaged by the coldness of the winter. It's very Fausti Benetto panicking a little bit, looking over his shoulder to see what's coming, and it's the express train there led by Jens Voigt, while we go a little bit closer to the front. And these are the two leaders on the slopes of the Côte de Stocker. A steep climb at certain points. It kicks in at 21% gradient. It doesn't look that difficult on a television camera, but I tell you one thing, I'm pretty sure you and I couldn't ride up it now, Bob.
I think I might have to get off and walk at this point in the race. Very steep, and it comes a long ways from the start, and of course there's a number of very tough climbs to go to the finish, and the gap hovering just under 2 minutes right now. I think that will be swept away very quickly, as these two riders, having been out on the attack all day long, very fatigued, a lot of lactic acid in the leg muscles, and you will see a totally different pace from the peloton when they get onto the slopes in just a few moments, led at this point by Jens Voigt and his teammate Gustav. And here we see the attack from the Quick-Step team from the peloton now.
Well, this is the hard work now being done by Quick-Step, as they're trying now to liven up the reaction here. There's a lot of riders got across to that group, but it's hurt a few riders as well. It is Peter Luttenberger who is up there on the third wheel, and the riders now trying to get clear on Stocker.
Well, you know what? We haven't talked very much about Paolo Bettini, the Olympic champion, since the start of the season. He's on the tail of those two teammates there, Bob, but he didn't look all that comfortable, and he really seems to be having a hard time this year getting into the form that's seen him be a really dominant rider in the one-day races.
Struggling a little bit there now. Look at Mirko Celestino's face. He's been going very hard, putting a lot of energy into this breakaway. The rider from the defending champions team, Gerald Steiner of Davide Robedin, seems to be Fabian Wegman, who's a very good climber. We saw him racing so hard for the King of the Mountain jersey in the Giro d'Italia last year. CSC Gusevs is making the pace. He has had a great spring so far, coming up with big results. And of course, Jens Voigt, never far from the front of any attack, one of the most aggressive bike racers in international cycling today.
Sorry, Paul.
A lot of the big names seem to have actually missed out here. I'm surprised to see a large group like this getting away on the slopes of the Côte d'Oise, because everybody knew this was going to be the very strategic part of the race. It looks as if it is Luttenberger who is in that group, with Karsten Kroon, the representative there for Rabobank. Lotz is up there as well for Quick-Step. Interesting to note that Pietro Cacchioli has got himself into that group, and the other T-Mobile rider in the group is supposedly Oscar Sevilla.
Well, it'd be nice to see him back in the action. He promised so much, and he had all sorts of problems with his team and contracts, and finished up eventually changing teams this year, and now he's on a team where he can do something. Maybe this is his moment. Noval wants to have a word. I think he wants a drink here, and again it's Vesseman first over the top, as he's done on all of the climbs so far. There is our statue, statuette, which Paul was telling us about, of the great Eddie Merckx. The thing about this climb is it still continues a little bit before it starts to tip down yet again. 1:18 to Group 3, so that indicates that one or two of the riders left by the leaders are still dangling around somewhere in the middle.
But have a quick look at that time gap there. It's 1:19 seconds, and that's actually come down almost 4 minutes in 10 kilometers. It gives you just an idea how difficult the chase is at the back part of the race. These guys, I think, have got the big advantage going through the Côte d'Oise and Stocker of being in a small group at the front, because it's less complicated getting to the bottom of this climb of Stocker. Jens Voigt is an unbelievable bike rider. He's had a great start to the season. As you said, I think, Phil, the thing I appreciate most about Jens Voigt, as he catches here, this is Koen de Kort, who is in that early morning breakaway of 5 riders. Voigt is prepared to race from February right the way through until October, and every race he starts, he wants to go out and do battle.
Yes, rather like Eric Zabel. Eric's now getting a little bit long in the tooth to find his great form that we've known at this time of the year. And boy, do the team miss him, because they're not winning any races without Eric Zabel just now. T-Mobile. The Celestino's second wheel here on Voigt, and just tucked in behind there will be the Phonak rider, Santiago Botero. Funny thing was, before we came on air today, we were talking about whatever happened to Santiago Botero. Well, here he is in the breakaway. New team this year, Phonak.
New team looking for some extra motivation. They moved across to the big T-Mobile squad a couple of years ago and did absolutely nothing really to show the successes that took him to King of the Mountains in the Tour de France and, of course, stage winner. These are the cobblestones through the town of Stavelot. And T-Mobile taking on board a few drinks there. I'm not sure that that was an official feeding point, Bob, but some of these teams in Belgium here have the ability to put themselves in the right place at the right time so the referees don't see them feeding up there.
Well, Benjamin Noval calling for the team car to come up to hand him some water. He was lucky there that the T-Mobile squad gave him one of their bottles, and little cooperation in the breakaway, so never a bad idea to help out the riders in the break that are trying to help your riders. So Vesemand and Noval will carry on with their breakaway. It was strange to see a rider of the quality of Paolo Bettini being dropped out of that second group on the road, being led by Jens Voigt. Bettini having a very hard time on that last climb and seemed to be clearly dropped by the pressure being put onto that breakaway by Jens Voigt. And it was nice to see Santiago Botero being able to make the change in tempo there, and Jens Voigt going very hard, down to 1 minute and 25 seconds now to our 2 leaders.
Just look at the gears these guys are pounding as they continue over the cobbles here and climb at the same time. This a very difficult section. This is the climb which has been reintroduced, the Côte de Haute-Levée. 3.5 kilometers of it all, and this comes straight off the back of Stocker. This is going to be tough now, and those boys who've thrown the gauntlet down behind, because we have to remind ourselves too that the average speed for the race today is 39.7 kilometers an hour, virtually 25 miles an hour in this terrain. A lot of people are going to pay the price for that.
I think the two guys at the front are going to pay a certain amount of their price too. I think this is Johan Verstrepen. He's also coming back from that leading group of 5. He's being picked up by that charging group of riders. I think, Bob, a lot of riders will have been caught out by the acceleration there of Jens Voigt, because big names like, of course, David Rebellin are absent. Danilo De Luca has not made the junction here at all, and they do certainly need to be just that little bit more attentive, because this section of the race this year is a little bit harder than it has been in the past, I think, because of the reintroduction here of this difficult climb, the Côte de Haute-Levée, which is renowned by the fact it's got that great big piece of concrete separating it down the middle of the road there. It's on the way up towards Francorchamps, and the way the gap is tumbling, I wonder if these riders will survive to the top of the climb, because Jens Voigt, I think, wants to pull it all back together very quickly.
12% grade at the bottom of the climb where the riders are on now. It gets a little bit more gradual towards the top of the climb, but this is coming quick on the heels of the climb just before. You can see Paolo Bettini has clawed his way back up into the breakaway. Vegemand is just tacked onto the back there with Karsten Kroon, and Jens Voigt, as he is always never far from the front, and Santiago Botero is on his wheel, but Jens Voigt allows 1 or 2 riders to come through and then takes a monstrous pull. Unbelievably strong athlete.
He's been so strong though, Bob. He's actually dispatched his own teammate Peter Luttenberger off the back of the group here. Luttenberger is a climber, whereas Jens tends to be just a very strong bike rider. The 2 Rabobank boys are still there. That'll be Karsten Groen and Peter Winning. Those 2 riders in amongst that group of, what, 7 riders. That's all that's left.
Just thinking about Jens Voigt there. He probably looked at Luttenberger because Luttenberger is Austrian. This man on the front here, Jens Voigt, is a German. He probably said, well, if it's too hot in here for you, get out of the kitchen.
Well, he's doing an awful lot of work, and he's not expecting any help from the rest. I'm not sure that's a wise situation with 50 miles still left to ride here, 79 kilometres. Still an awful long way to go, but the crowd have taken over the main road here, that's for sure. As the Voigt still looks over straight at the face of Santiago Botero, no help coming from him. And this is the bicycle of Stefan Vesemand, who still looks pretty cool out there, and so too, I have to say, does Noval. Both not panicking because they know what's going on behind, they know the chase is coming up, they're still riding their own race here, and these 2 boys look pretty cool. I think we're seeing the foundations being laid here of the decisive moves of the day, and I think a lot of riders back there have sensed this, and that's why Danilo De Luca and Michael Bogart, and I'm pretty sure David Rebellin, have got to try and put matters to rights, because soon we're going to have a select chase group having been made up of only the strong men.
These roads now, you see we've just come off a very large main road from Haute-Levée down to the outskirts of Francorchamps. But once you turn off again onto these tiny little roads, Bob, here in the Ardennes, these roads are so hard. They're narrow roads. They're very difficult to organise the chase. And that's why I think there's a certain amount of panic in that group behind, because these guys know they've got to nail it back as quickly as possible. Otherwise, a well-organised group is going to get formed.
Well, Sid at the back here now is winning, and this group here have got two passengers now, because they must be aware that Michael Bogart and Eric Decker are racing to try and come up to this group. And this is the group containing Fabian Weckmann, Bettini, Jens Voigt, Carsten Kroon, Peter Wenning, Santiago Botero and Celestino. The two Rabobank are not going to help here now, because they've got two more on the way across, and it's not that big of a gap. And very shortly we're going to have a very select group. Right over to the right of our picture, in the zigzags of the motorbikes, lost in the middle there, the two leaders, then the 7 chasers, and then the big hitters are trying to reach them all. Stunning countryside. It's very hard countryside to race a bike in, but really you come down here for a touring holiday, it is beautiful.
Well, I think at touring pace it is beautiful at around about 20 kilometres an hour. Let's not forget these guys have been riding at an average of 40 kilometres an hour since the start, and it's down to around about 10 or 15 seconds. If you can see the yellow car occasionally up the road, that's the yellow car of the neutral service vehicle, which is right behind the two leaders. But these riders here now are very rapidly closing in, and the main field, which is not very many riders left, just further back, they're still only around about 35 seconds behind this group, so it could all come together on the Côte de Rosiers.
17 seconds the gap now. It's just around that top corner, I would suspect, and then we're going to have 9 front runners. Say a lot for these two boys though, because there's a lot of racing going on behind on today's Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and they are not closing this down all that quickly. Little downhill stretch coming before we start the climbs again. Weissman allowing Noval to do his share of the pacemaking. Remember, these two have been out front since 30 kilometres into the race, and here we are now. So let me just say, 160 kilometres, exactly 100 miles now. These riders have been in the lead.
I think just looking at the attitude now, once they saw that red car go past, that red car is the car of the race referee, and that's an indication that the gap is well inside of 30 seconds. Now this is Group 3 on the road. That was Alexander Vinokourov. That's Jörg Yachts there in the dark blue. He's also a man. That's Matthias Kessler going through, and a lot of people have put his name down as the dark horse to possibly do something rather special towards the end of the day, and that is something that I really believe T-Mobile have to do, because they are certainly short on a little bit of victories this year. There was Kim Kierken going through, the Luxembourg national champion. Looks like David Rabelin sitting at the back of the group, and he's just keeping an eye on affairs for the moment. Very good tactician, Rabelin. He won't panic at all. He'll leave it up to everybody else to try and do most of the pacemaking, and I still think he's got it in his belt to do something special at the end of today.
Well, he's not going to waste his energy too soon, because he knows we're now entering the purple section of this race, the tough section. There's Paolo Bettini. Looks like a sprinter, is a sprinter, just broken his glasses, but apart from that, everything's going pretty well for him. He is a great bike rider, he is the Olympic champion, and this could be the start of his season now. He's on his way back, his form is good. He's yo-yoed a little bit today, Bob, so he's under pressure, but he looks cool again now.
He did a good job to put his sunglasses back together,
going
about 80 kilometers an hour with no handlebars on the descent. That is quite a talented bike racer. I think I would have had to discard those if that happened to me. And there we see the group containing Bettini coming right on the heels of our two leaders who have been out in the front of the bike race since the 30th kilometer. So there'll be quite a bit different form in the legs from the two leaders to this group coming across. Mirko Celestino now, a great classics racer, has won a bunch of World Cup races in his past. Jens Voigt on his wheel, and the two Rabobank riders still in there. They're playing a very good card today. They've got Bugert and Deckert coming across from behind. So if that is the case, there'll be at least four Rabobank riders in the front group. This is the end of the descent, and right straight into the next climb, the Côte de Rosiers, and Jens Voigt is going to make the juncture right here immediately on the lower slopes of this very tough climb.
Well, I'll tell you, that's a horrible place to get caught, isn't it? Because now they're going to hit it very hard, and the acceleration might hurt at least Noval. 12% at the bottom, and it's just on at 4 kilometres, 2.5 miles up this climb. 68 kilometres still to ride, and it's going to be tough from here on in. Celestino, let's not forget, his best ever finish in this race was 4th back in 2002, on form with his 3rd place in last week's Amstel Gold.
Wonder what those two boys are thinking right now. Stefan Weissemann in the pink jersey of T-Mobile, and of course Benjamin Noval led the race for 100 miles. I think right now they'll be looking for the team car at the side of the road and the quick way back to the baths. But this chasing group, and this is Eric Decker, who's come straight out of the gap here as soon as they started the Côte de Rosier. He wants to take advantage, I think, as one or two riders were starting to take on board bottles to try and get himself across the gap. They're hovering at around about 40 seconds, the distance between that leading group now of riders and the chase group, which contains most of the big pre-race favourites.
I have to say that Decker's a racer too, just like Voigt. If he senses a slackening of the pace, there's 29 riders in this group right now, and I think they're rapidly pulling away from everybody else in today's edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And so very soon the winner's going to be in this sort of front group of 38, including the breakaways. Eric Decker driving on. We've got Michael Bogart in this group. Looking down there, though, I don't see the world champion any longer.
Well, we'll have to have a look down at maybe not quite the race for Oscar Freire, although he rode a very good Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago. There's Kim Kirken just over to the left-hand side, the Luxembourg national champion. Jorg Jacks very much the leader, I think, this afternoon of Liberty Seguros, but it's difficult to spot. There's Danilo De Luca moving up on the right-hand side. But you could be right, Oscar Freire could have got caught out on the succession of climbs of the Côte d'Ouen, Stocker and Haute-Levée, because I don't see the world champions jersey in that group either.
Well, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Freire was very aggressive on the start of the climb. He was going well when we got to the Côte d'Ouen, so maybe he had a flat, who knows. Axel Merckx has had problems today. He's had to change his pedal. I believe he broke a pedal at the start, but he got back into the groups. These are the leaders now, reforming, sitting at the back and not looking quite so comfortable now as Benjamin Noval of the Discovery squad. There he is, and he's dangling a little bit now, so the pressure's gone on. Not surprisingly, in the lead for 160 kilometres today. We're almost now at 193 kilometres done on today's stage.
Côte de Rosier, and again looks as if nobody actually really wants to work together. This is Michael, it looks like Michael Bogert, the style of Bogert trying to get across out of the gap. These guys obviously do have a plan. They probably feel quite comfortable with the fact that they've got two riders in the front of the group, and if they can get across there, that's really going to change an awful lot of the composition and the tactics in that leading group. This is the leading group. Stefan Weissemann just staying in contact there, but I would think he'd be right on the edge of his saddle, and he knows very shortly there's going to be some serious moves.
Ouch. Look at this one now. This is another move. Now this is Vinokourov, who's gone clear. That's the tempter, and that's what I think Weissemann has been working hard for all day. Now Vinokourov is trying to thin that group down. Now Rebellin, Bob, was sitting there in third wheel and didn't react to this attack.
This is a vicious attack by Rebellin. Waited for the pace to slacken just a slight amount after the group closed the gap to Decker and then Bogert. So now a lot of furious attacks being put in, and that's a great move. There'll have to be a reaction by one of the pre-race favorites, Alexander Vinokourov.
I was going to say Basso trying to go away here now. The others are going to have to react to that. This is going to be a tough finale today because these riders are saving nothing.
Well, they're saving nothing at all, and it's rather scary because towards the end we've got the climb of the Côte de Sartillemont and of course the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and if you don't have any energy left in those legs, they are difficult climbs. I think we may well see these guys taking the risks of trying to form a breakaway a long way from the finish today, which is exactly what the race organisation wanted. Good move by Alexander Vinokourov, who is a great bike rider. Probably didn't have the start of the season he wanted because he certainly would have liked to try and win himself Paris-Nice again. And really, Bob, I think that race rather strange the tactics of many teams because of the bad weather.
Yeah, it's a horrible weather, horrible start in the spring races. Snow out on the course. A lot of those stages had to be shortened. And look at how quickly Vinokourov has got across the gap to our leading group, going right past Noval as if he was standing still. Vinokourov, no trouble at all to reintegrate into our lead group, and that was right straight from the back group that was probably hovering around 20-30 seconds behind. So an incredible move by Vinokourov. Doesn't seem to be breathing too hard either, so he must be on some very good form today.
Third last year, Alexander Vinokourov trying to put himself in a podium position again at this time around. There's the group he left. We saw how quickly he did it. Noval is filling the gap, and this race now knows that these are the first telling moments of the race today. They've got to have the answer, otherwise they're going to be out of it. We're getting up into the dizzy heights here now. Poursuivant, this is the chasing group, the pursuers if you like, all looking at each other. Always a bad sign when you start looking at each other. Who's going to make the next effort?
Who's the next man to make the move? 66 kilometers to go to the finish. Once they get over the summit of the Côte de Rosier, they've got around about 12 kilometers of undulating road before they get to the next climb. Another one of the new climbs added this year, the Côte de la Vecchie. I have to say, Bob, I've got no idea at all what that climb is like, because it's never been used in Liège-Bastogne-Liège before.
Well, it's a very tough finale. There's no question about that. Now the attacks. Oscar Perrault, perhaps from the Phonak team there, trying to get across himself. And look how difficult this is in the front group. CSC coming to the front with Basso, not able to do that. Here comes a Phonak rider. I think that might be Perrault. Botero is in the front. He will get no help whatsoever as they go past Noval, screaming past him. Kessler on his wheel. Of course, he has Vinokourov and Veseman in the front group now. Veseman has gone back to the front and is setting a very tough tempo, so it's going to be that much harder for these riders to get across.
I would go with you there, Bob. I think it is Pereiro who's doing it. This is Matthias Kessler, who's hooked onto his back wheel. Won't help him yet because he's still got men up front. Got every reason not to help him out. We've got 9 riders in the front group, 2 more about to join, and here comes the cavalry as well, because this time it's Andrei Kashekin from Kazakhstan, so he can at least have a chat with Vinokourov when he gets up there. But these riders now trying to get clear. It's still a feeling of every man for himself. Sooner or later, this is going to all go wrong for someone. Jens Voigt still driving on, Botero, and tagged on is Wegmuller.
Well, these guys are still holding on, but they've only got around about a 15-second advantage over the front end of that group, who is now taking this group very, very seriously. In fact, the Phonak rider trying to get across the gap there was Martin Perdiguero, another man who's in pretty good form at the moment. It just seems like everything's starting to come together for Team Phonak, who, as we said earlier, had a very difficult time being integrated into the Pro Tour and only came in at the very last moment. There's Perdiguero, looking very comfortable. This is a very difficult move here as these riders try to get themselves across the gap, and they may well have caught this second group on the road here somewhat by surprise, because there's Danilo De Luca. They've got VDB written all over the side of the road there for Van den Broeke, and I wonder where he is these days.
I was going to ask you, any idea, Bob?
He's playing snooker in Belgium at a bar in Ghent. He's not racing his bike currently, even though he has a contract. He's been given a last chance about 15 times, so I don't know if we'll ever see one of the best talents in many years back in the professional bike race.
Do you remember the way that he won Liège-Bastogne-Liège a couple of years ago? He absolutely played with the opposition, and that was back in 1999. Oh, boom, it looks as if that man's just had a few problems.
Well,
was it
a flat tire or the end of the day?
That was flat legs, I believe.
Lights are out.
100 miles in the front, he can be excused. He did 2 very hard turns for that man, Vinokourov, and then Kessler trying to close the gap to this group. 4 guys chasing this group here with Jens Voigt in it, and it looks like they've come across. That's Kessler and Vinokourov from the T-Mobile squad have made it to the front group. Bettini's in there on the wheel of Botero, who's setting second wheel right now.
Well, if I'm certain there was a plan to put Veseman on the attack so early. It seems so far to have worked. Job done as far as he's concerned, because he's got 2 very strong T-Mobile riders now in the front group, which was the name of the game. So if he were to pack in after a successful breakaway and they were to get the win, it would be a terrific day out for T-Mobile.
This is Ivan Basso here. He's having a nice easy ride up as well. He's just keeping a very close eye on the riders in front of him.
It looks like Damiano Cunego, perhaps the Lamprey rider, winner of the Giro d'Italia, trying to close a gap himself. Basso is coming across with Jorg Jaksch from the Liberty Seguro squad. This is a very select group. It's been very aggressive. The peloton sensing that it's the moment of the race where the strongest riders have come to the front. No matter how far it is from the finish, you have to play your cards when the big names are up the road, like that man Paolo Bettini, and on his wheel Mirko Celestino.
Look at that though, Jens Voigt. He obviously heard over the radio that his teammate Basso was coming along there. He sat up, went down the group to see if he could just help him, pace him back over the last 20 or 30 meters to make that junction a little bit easier. And the big names are seeing this as being a very dangerous point of the race here, and they don't want to miss out, as we've seen on a number of occasions in the past.
64 kilometers to go. Only the strong will out today. This has been a terrific race so far, and still a long way to go to the finish. These riders now are going to have to hang on in there. This is Michael Bogart, still desperately trying to reach the sharp end of the race. It may not be too long for him, but there's an awful lot of riders here now willing to work very hard indeed. It's shaping up to be a great addition.
It certainly is. It's been a lot more aggression, a lot further out from the finish line than we've seen over the last couple of years, and that's obviously got a lot to do with the fact that they've put in 2 more additional climbs into Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year, making 12 climbs from the start all the way down to the finish, and 10 of those climbs actually come after the turning point of Bastogne. Just coming up here, I would think that Michael Bogert has made the junction here, and this is starting to become a rather large group. Very sensible move across there by Cunego, just sitting at the back there in the dark blue and pink jersey of Lamprey. And he's a rider, Bob, who's just getting himself ready to defend his title of winner of the Giro d'Italia.
He's starting to come back on form. He's promised to do some good things earlier this year. He hasn't really delivered, but now we see that he's in very good form leading up to the Giro d'Italia in just a few weeks. He was the winner of the Giro of Lombardy, a very similar course to Liège-Bastogne-Liège at the end of last season. So Damiano Cunego has finished off last year as the world's #1 rider, and now you can see why. He's a great bike racer, young man, just about 23, 24 years of age, and now he's in a very select group at the front end of Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
This actually doesn't look very good, does it, Bob? Because when you see riders moving across the road and slowing down, taking on board bags like that, it takes the impetus out of it, and it may well be that David Rebellin and Danilo De Luca are being caught out here, because that group at the front has swelled in numbers as riders have tried to get across one at a time. Somebody has slipped the move here.
It's a horrible way to ride a race, this, when you mark, because that was Rebellin, couldn't control the groups, and this is the next man from the Boyga team going away now.
Like Laurent Brochard.
It is, it's the team leader. A good move. He saw everybody fanning out, and he's made his move. He's got rid of Rebellin and De Luca.
De Luca and Rebellin making a huge tempo, were unable to get all the way across, and so it was Brochard taking the last possible chance to get back to our leaders. If they would be able to look a little bit further forward, they see that they're going through the feed zone. They've sat up for a second. Valverde there in the middle of the screen there. This is the last chance to take an official feed from the feed zone. So we'll see if Brochard can get across, but he made a great move. The gap, however, is starting to climb to the chasers behind De Luca, Rebellin, and Brochard. Probably a little bit less than 28 seconds, but it's going to be a very tough chase for him to get back into here. This big group all by himself.
It'll be interesting to see if Brochard does fly across that gap now. That'll give us some idea. He's got a good chance just now to close quickly, as our man here tries to dodge our motorbike again as we start another little climb now. This is the climb out of the town. Let's see what happens. That's the chase group down there.
This is the Côte de la Vecchie. It's 3.2 kilometers in length. It's very steep at the bottom at 11%, although it's only an average gradient in total of 6.7 now. This is an important time here to try and get across, and once again Eric Decker, what a great battler. I remember a couple of years ago he won himself 3 stages in the Tour de France, and all in different manners. One was from a breakaway, one was in a big sprint, and the other was from a small group. So he's really a talented bike rider, champion of Holland here, you can see. He's a man who must be getting pretty much towards the end of his career as well, and a lot of bad luck over the last couple of seasons. Had to battle his way back from a dramatic crash in Milan-San Remo, which saw him with a broken leg. He had a hard time actually walking, and he was able to ride his bike before he could actually walk properly without a limp.
Well, the work being done in the breakaway by Botero here, which is for his teammate Pereiro, who's sitting halfway down the line. So obviously they're trying to save Pereiro till the last couple of mountains. See what happens. Watch out for the yellow car. Because professional cyclists usually let service cars go by, because they know one day they might need what's on the roof.
In fact, he may well be trying to think about working for Perdiguero as well.
Sorry, I meant Perdiguero.
He's a man who is, well, Pereira's been aggressive in the early part of this race, but Perdiguero, another man who so far this season has not really had a very good crack at performances, but he's now coming into his own, and as Bob said a little earlier, it's a different kind of rider here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Flèche-Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège is normally the time when you see the stage race riders come out for the first time, and we see the men who are getting ready for the Giro d'Italia and of course for the Tour de France start to shine. There's the Luxembourg national champion just at the back of the group there, and it looks rather interesting here because Eric Decker's got himself most of the way across this gap here, and this is the Côte de la Vecchie, wearing number 91 there, as well as David Echevarria. So this is a general changing, and there it looks like
it's the merging.
Number 1, David Rebellin. So he's actually read the race properly.
They've managed to use just their pure strength here, and they're coming on. There goes Danilo De Luca. That's bad news for the breakaway. top two men, one on form, won the winner last year, now hooking up. Decker's got across as well, who's been the main animator, I think. It's a great feeling when you finally hook up to the back wheels of the leaders. A few deep breaths. Now we'll see what happens. But they did slow down in this leading group, and they've thrown away a good chance, I think.
I reckon when Rebellin gets onto the back there, Bob, Danilo De Luca's going to say a very big grazie mille.
Grazie mille. Thank you very much. Rebellin seeing that this is where the race is, so he's going to have a couple of teammates in there still. One of the earlier attackers, just a few kilometers, Stefan Wegman, will be up there. So De Luca, however, I don't see a single other Liquigas rider, and that's if he gets a flat tire or if it gets very aggressive, he'll have to close the gaps himself. So Danilo De Luca has had a very hard time getting back into the front group. The other riders, of course, seeing that the Liquigas team is not as strong, and then they put in the all-out attacks just in case Danilo De Luca is on the type of form that we've seen the last few days in Amstel Gold Race, as well as Flush Alone with De Luca winning. Didn't seem to be too troubled by either one of those race courses, but he's having a very hard time being the hot favorite, trying to close all the gaps, counter all the attacks without a single teammate to help him out.
A guy I've just seen there riding second wheel, first time I spotted him, Alejandro Valverde is in this group as well. That's more trouble. And Cadell Evans is also riding on good form now and long overdue for a big success. There's all the names now. They've worked them all out for you, but Ivan Basso is here, and so too, of course, now are the bigger names as well.
Well, look at that there for Team Phonak. Oscar Pereiro, Botero and Perdiguero. Joaquin Rodriguez, Paolo Bettini with two teammates, Mark Lotz and Peter Sinkiewicz, who's been riding pretty well recently. Jorg Yachts and Angel Vicioso. All of the big names seem to be moving into this leading group. Alejandro Valverde is completely and utterly in the group. We've got now around about 17 kilometers where there is no real official climb before we get to the Côte de la Redoute, but these false flats are very, very difficult, and I think it's on this section here that if you're not attentive you could see the reforming of another serious move, and I'm surprised to see that man Jens Voigt has still got some power in the engine room, Bob.
Well, now the other teams are going to have to chase. Vino Kurov getting across here to Jens Voigt. Here's a replay of the attack coming on the right-hand side of the road. Jens Voigt, so aggressive, so strong. It's amazing that he can put an attack like this after being up the road attacking throughout the finale of this bike race. And it's Vino Kurov countering the move by Jens Voigt, trying to get back on terms with the big strong rider formerly of East Germany. Now he's on the CSC team, so the German rider and the Kazakh man now in the front of the bike race. Their team can now sit back, sit on the wheels, and the other riders will have to chase.
Eric Decker done the job of getting his teammates across here, and I think he's under spot of brother right now because he's not been able to stay with the group because of the acceleration there coming from Jens Voigt. Jens Voigt, by the way, a couple of years ago was voted the best amateur cyclist in the world, and I think he's proving that as he continues with a great career. He's a tough bike rider. He does not worry at all about keeping a little bit of caution, a little bit of energy for the end. He just goes out on the attack when the legs feel good.
Never say never for Jens. He's a fabulous bike rider. Rode amongst the Australians once on the first ever Australian team, so he speaks extremely good English. Looks as though we've got a spot of bother at the back again here now. Riders are coming off one after the Lotz was up with those leaders, and he's going the way of Eric Decker. Poor old Eric got caught out a bit there. And this is the face of Jens Voigt, and again it's the speed of this aging German, I mean that in the nicest terms too, who's now beginning to hurt the rest of the field. There's the earpiece. He's not listening to his favourite disco music, by the way. It's every time he sits in the saddle, the director probably shouts at him to get out and keep pushing on. It's 53 kilometres. Watch out for the guy at the back. He's got great form. David Echebarria, little man who can climb and sprint at the same time.
Echebarria is a tough bike rider. In fact, he rode very well over the last few weeks and got himself a very nice place at the end of the Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago. He's the kind of bike rider who will be able to sit at the back and not pay too much attention and conserve a certain amount of energy and then try and use it down towards the end. He got himself a big win just recently in Spain in the big race, the Tour of the Ambaretia, one of the big races just before the start of the Basque Country Tour. Lining out this area in between the Côte de la Vaquer and the Côte de la Redoute, Bob, is certainly no flat part of the road. There's not very much area where the riders can actually get a breather on a race like this.
Very tough section of road here. False flat, as we call it, slightly uphill. Vino Kurov struggling to get on the wheel of Jens Voigt. both of these riders putting in this attack so that the other teams are obliged to chase. Of course, if they don't chase, these are two of the strongest bike racers in the entire classic Liège-Bastogne-Liège today. The other teams like Liberty Seguros will have to get organized and do a little bit of chasing themselves. So that's, I'm sure, why Jens Voigt has been asked to go forward to give Ivan Basso a chance to catch his breath. Of course, CSC or T-Mobile will not be involved in the chase at all. Matthias Kessler, the teammate of Alexander Vinokourov, might be on the better form of the two and is being sit back there now with Rebellin, with Michael Bugert, with Danilo De Luca, waiting to see who's going to organize the chase of our two leaders now. And it looks like Santiago Botero from the Phonak team, who has two very strong teammates himself, is doing the brunt of the pacemaking, trying to close the gap to Voigt and Vinokourov.
Two riders up front now then, Voigt and Vinokourov. Remember that Jens Voigt is German. No Germans won this race since 1979. The famous Didi Thurau, who was on the old TI rally team, became something of a pin-up boy during the 70s, and indeed was a great leader of the Tour de France for about 10 days during one of the tours. But these are the legs now of the man who's hurting just about everybody, and this is a rider who really knows how to hurt people. He's one of those annoying cyclists when you're going through a bad patch, because he never stops attacking you, rather like the old Claudio Chiappucci of days gone by. Vinokourov equally as aggressive. Remember, he was the rider who won the stage that Lance Armstrong narrowly avoided crashing into the back of Yoshiba Bolocki in the Tour de France into Gap a couple of years ago. Lance went across the fields, Bolocki went to hospital, and Vinokourov won the stage.
Very talented bike rider, had a very good season, in fact, with 3 stage wins in Paris-Nice last year, and that coming after he'd been the winner the previous season. Jens Voigt, though, really is a beast of a man, and you can see now the reactions coming here behind, and looks very much as if somebody else is trying to come across there. It was Matthias Kessler, I think, who was matching the moves from Quick Step. Quick Step obviously thinking about trying to get their man Paolo Bettini into a winning position if he can at the end of the day. I'm really amazed, Phil, at how hard they've raced this section of the course, because towards the end there are still a lot of very difficult climbs to go. After, of course, the Côte de la Redoute, you've got those very two difficult climbs down towards the end, the Côte de Sartillemont, and of course, if you've got no energy left in the legs, you've got to try and drag your body up this very difficult climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which is right at the end of the event.
And don't forget, the ride up to the line is very hard. It never really, once over the top, levels out until you're up there on the last bend. You swing into the home straight, and then you can forget the pain for another year. 34 seconds the gap. Nice little gap to start with. I think they might stay clear now till the start of the climb of the Côte de la Redoute, and then we'll see who tries to reach them on that climb. It's an out of the saddle climb all the way up to its summit.
Horrible climb, and it's not going to be a big group of riders started like last year, and that's why the organisation have tried to toughen up this race just a fraction. This is Alexander Vinokourov, certainly looking to try and open up the account for T-Mobile this season, a team which has been one of the top teams in the world, have had probably the worst ever start to the season. Although their man Eric Zabel has been omnipresent, he's yet to open up his account as he's been joined here. Vinokourov here has been joined by Jens Voigt, taking advantage of the descent off the summit of the Côte de la Véquée. And as I said, there's around about, from here, 14 kilometres to go to the Côte de la Redoute.
30 riders in this group trying to close down. So I think that's it now. This is the group which will decide Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and tacked on the back here, Laurent Brochard calling for a drink probably. And in front of him, the hot favourite for victory in the white jersey is Pro Tour leader Danilo De Luca. Had to work very, very hard to put himself in this position, and clearly now wants to try and recover before we get to La Redoute. We'll descend into Romnechon, go across the little cobbled square there, round the back door, up under the bridge, and then the climb is up on us. And it'll be interesting to see whether De Luca's left himself with enough power to go with the move, which surely he's going to try and form on La Redoute. It's going to be good fun on La Redoute. If you're watching, it could be a very serious situation if you're in that chase group. 30 riders in that group just behind, being driven on consistently here by Santiago Botero, clearly in favour of two very strong teammates in this group. He'll expect them to make a move, I think, at La Redoute. Basso's poised there as well. Has De Luca got the legs? Kim Kirken, bang on form after his second place the other day, is here as well. They know each other pretty well this week.
So look at Eric Decker, though. Dropped a few moments ago, moving himself straight back up to the front end of the main field. This guy realizes that Michael Bogert has got a very good chance of doing well here this afternoon, and he knows the team needs assistance. It's so difficult when you've been dropped on 2 or 3 occasions to get your mind right to go up to the front and work for the team, but that's why Eric Decker is a man that this team really counts on a lot.
Eric Decker, never far from the front. Botero on his wheel, weaning from the Rabobank squad, and teammates of Michael Bogert there in 3rd position, chasing these 2 men, Vinokourov and Jens Voigt. Vinokourov has done a good job to get across this gap to Jens Voigt. He hasn't contributed that much to the pacemaking because he knows this is a tactical move from the CSC team to soften up the legs of the chasers. Ivan Basso, of course, will not have to do any work if there is a group to try to come and get across who are 2 leaders. Great ride by Vinokourov so far. Jens Voigt playing the team game. So strong, so powerful. It's great to have him on your team. It's a disaster if he's on another team when he's on good form, because you know it's going to be a very attacking situation every time the race gets hard.
Around about 4 kilometers now to go into the town of Remouchon. Every cyclo-tourist in the world knows that Remouchon is the bottom of the climb of the Côte de la Redoute, and I think you know that pretty well, Phil. I remember seeing you do a stand-up at the top there.
Oh, I don't know. I did 1 or 2. By the time I did the 3rd or 4th take to the camera, I couldn't stand up at all.
It wasn't the words, it was just the breath you couldn't
I
get.
had no breath left. I was riding with the old Motorola team, and I did so many retakes, I was out of breath by the time I finished. Andy Hampson thought I was marvellous at the time. But I've in fact ridden this course they have an amateur randonnée cycle right here. It starts in nearby Tilth rather than Liège, but covers exactly the same route. It's a wonderful day out, that's if you like climbing, and huge crowds turn out to watch just club cyclists go on the route. As crowds nearly as big as Liège-Bastogne-Liège. They just love their cycling in the region.
CSC in a very nice tactical position there, sitting in 3rd and 4th position. Ivan Basso, I would think, will be thinking very much about the counter-attack if this leading group of 2 riders gets pulled back into the fold. Jens Voigt getting down into an aerodynamic position. What he's trying to do for the moment is just recover a fraction before they get into Remouchon, and then of course the very difficult climb of the Côte de la Redoute, in company still with Alexander Vinokourov, who I have to say is looking for the first big one-day win of his career.
The descending skills of Jens, the attacking riding of Alexander. Remouchon is in the valley, and then over the ridge is La Redoute, and then you scarper for home if you can do it. But I've got a feeling that there will be an elite group of cyclists trying to chase them once over the top of La Redoute.
Vinokourov a couple of years ago got himself a win in the Amstel Gold Race, which this year has been regarded, I suppose you should say, demoted. It doesn't carry the same number of points in the Pro Tour as races like Liège, Bastogne-Liège and Paris-Roubaix.
I'm yet to understand the point system of the Pro Tour. You only get points for the first 3 places in the World Championship, while you get points for the first 10 places in a minor classic like Ghent-Wevelgem. I'm not too sure how that works, but